No one wakes up at 3 a.m. in the South Bronx because something good happened. However, Lisa Thompson was never the type to wait for the sun to rise before taking action. The night shift at the Velvet Lantern Hotel had just ended, and she was locking the side door that led to the alley after mopping the floors. Outside, the rain slapped her face sharply, and the smell of rain mixed with old trash rose like a reminder that this place wasn't meant for the faint of heart. Lisa pulled her soaked thin coat tighter around herself, ready to cross the empty street, and returned to her tiny apartment above the laundromat. A sound made her stop. A man stood motionless by the roadside, his expensive overcoat heavy with rain, his shoulders trembling slightly in the cold wind. He didn't move or turn when she approached. He just stood there waiting for something from the grey sky. Then he collapsed. No warning, no cry. His body dropped like a snapped thread. Lisa didn't think. Instinct drove her forward, ignoring the faint hiss from two hooded men watching from across the street. She heard their footsteps begin to cross slow and deliberate. Her breath quickened, not from fear but because time slipped through her fingers. "Sir," she called, her knees hitting the cold pavement. His hand was icy, his pulse as thin as paper. Nearby, a dark leather wallet lay in a puddle. She glanced at a designer watch, tailored clothes, and a gold name tag that read Raymond Ellis. Lisa heard footsteps behind her. The two men were close now. "Not tonight," she whispered, her voice calmer than expected. She slipped her arms under his armpits and pulled with every ounce of strength in her work-worn shoulders. "We're not dying here." She dragged him through the side entrance of the Velvet Lantern, her shoes slipping on the wet tiles. The two men outside faded into shadows behind the door she slammed shut. The smell of bleach and damp towels greeted her as usual, but Lisa's heart had changed. The man lay limp on the waiting bench, salt and pepper hair plastered to his forehead. His breath reeked of hard liquor, but there was no sign he was homeless. She opened his wallet, not out of curiosity but duty. His name glowed under the fluorescent light, Raymond Ellis, a man the whole of New York had seen on the cover of Forbes magazine. Lisa sat still for a few seconds. Then she stood, pulled out her phone, and called a cab. She didn't know who he truly was or why he'd ended up here on a rainy night, but she knew one thing: no one deserved to be left behind on the street while the world turned its back. And if no one else would do something, then she would. 3 days had passed since that rainy night. Lisa still worked the night shift as usual, wiping down counters, folding towels, and checking room bills. Darnell at the front desk asked her a couple of times about that strange man from the other night, but she just shook her head. "He's fine." I put him in a taxi, and that was that. For Lisa, helping someone was enough. No gratitude expected, no follow-up needed. Wednesday morning, just before noon, the doorbell rang. Lisa was arranging napkins for the bar and didn't bother looking up. "Probably Mr. Travers," she muttered, asking for more lemon for his iced tea again. "Excuse me," a voice said, low, polite, vaguely familiar. Lisa looked up. The man standing before her wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his hair neatly combed, his posture confident. But she recognized him instantly. It was him, the man she had pulled off the street in the rain, his legs sliding on broken pavement, his body cold and reeking of alcohol. Now he no longer looked fragile. He looked powerful, like a man who had taken back control. "I owe you a proper thank you," he said, eyes locked on hers. The entire hotel lobby fell silent. Darnell looked up from his computer screen. The morning janitor, Nadine, suddenly became interested in scrubbing the bar counter beside them. Lisa gripped the napkin in her hands, trying to stay composed. "You look like you're walking just fine now," she replied evenly. "Guess the taxi did its job." "It wasn't the taxi that saved me that night." "You talk like I did something extraordinary." She crossed her arms. "Anyone would have done the same. It's a shame that no one else did." He paused, then continued, "I looked into you, Lisa Thompson." Her heart tightened slightly. She knew he was wealthy, but she hadn't expected that wealth, the kind that could uncover someone's life in a matter of days. "You dropped out of college at 19 to care for your sick mother. You once worked 3 jobs at the same time. You kept this place running while the former manager embezzled money. And, his gaze softened, you even paid for my cab out of your pocket. Lisa narrowed her eyes. You're making a lot of assumptions. No, he said quietly. I'm stating facts. He reached into his coat, pulled out a slim leather folder, and placed it gently on the counter. I own this hotel, he said, and several others. The Velvet Lantern is one of the worst performing with poor management, weak revenue, and crumbling infrastructure. I was planning to sell it. Lisa said nothing. She had suspected as much for a while. But I reviewed the footage from that night. I saw how you reacted. No hesitation, no indifference. You pulled a stranger back from the edge like it was part of your daily routine. Lisa clenched her hands. What do you want from me? Nothing. I want to give you this hotel. The napkin in her hand tore in half. You're crazy, she blurted. Maybe he smiled faintly. But I'm not joking. The full transfer paperwork has been prepared with no debts in your name. No traps, no hidden fees. My lawyer will walk you through everything. Lisa stared at the folder. It seemed to glow not from the lights, but from the weight of something she had never dared believe she could touch: opportunity. And if I say no, you're free to decline, but I hope you don't. He turned to leave, then paused. You're the kind of person who doesn't wait for permission to do the right thing. That kind is rare. Then he walked out as quietly as he had come in. Lisa stood frozen, all eyes still on her. Nadine whispered, "You gonna open it?" Lisa looked at the thin folder light as a butterfly, but heavy as a question hovering over her entire life. She didn't open it. Not yet, she couldn't, but deep down she knew, from that moment on, everything had changed. Lisa spent a week before opening the folder, not because she was afraid, but because she understood once she opened it, everything would begin, and there would be no turning back. On Sunday morning, after her mother had fallen asleep in the nursing home and the Bronx sky was overcast but dry, Lisa pulled the folder from beneath her bed. She sat by the window at the small kitchen table and turned to the first page. Her name. Below is a bold heading, Full Asset Transfer, Velvet Lantern Inn. She read every line in detail, notarized and signed. The same paper she'd wrestled with in rental contracts and pay invoices wasn't a binding agreement this time. It was an invitation to the door. Behind the folder was a small envelope. Inside, a handwritten note in blue ink. You gave someone else a chance to hold on to dignity. Let this do the same for you. R.E. Lisa inhaled deeply. Her heart pounded like a war drum. Monday morning, she returned to the hotel earlier than usual. Darnell spotted her from the lobby and laughed. You look like you're about to cause a storm. No storm, she replied, her voice resolute. Renovation. She entered the manager's office, the room she'd only ever peeked into, when Mr. Bell, the former manager, appeared in a haze of cigar smoke and grumbling. Inside, dust lay thick. The chair was torn, and a 2014 calendar hung on the wall. A stale, musty smell punched her in the face. Lisa flipped the light switch. It flickered a few times before reluctantly turning on. She began working. Drawer by drawer, she examined file after file. She opened invoices and checked suppliers. She made phone calls, verified tax IDs, matched numbers with digital records. The deeper she dug, the stranger the names. Briarstone Holdings, Nash Financial, Eastgate Logistics, all appeared on recurring bills. Regular transactions, but phone numbers disconnected. Addresses leading to mailboxes in other states. Company registration IDs not found in the National Registry. Lisa began tagging suspicious files with yellow post-it notes. She sketched a chart linking each company, and all paths led back to one name, Carl Bell, the former manager who'd retired months ago for no known reason. She didn't find mistakes. She found a system. An intricate network deliberately avoids legal scrutiny by keeping all transactions under auditing thresholds, always under $5,000. By midnight, she found a rusty key hidden under the sofa cushion in the waiting room. She unlocked the old metal cabinet in the corner that Carl had never let anyone touch. Click. Inside were dozens of handwritten ledgers. No digital records, no online trail, but there were names, dates, and amounts. One page read clearly, diversion, laundry, March, payment $3,200, Eastgate. No invoice issued. Lisa stiffened. This wasn't just mismanagement, this was deliberate money laundering. She set the ledger down, hands trembling lightly. She hadn't just been offered a hotel, she had been handed a smoldering pile of embers. Just then, her phone buzzed, a message from Darnell Lisa. A man just came asking about the new owner. Grey suit, left no name, only said he's an old friend of Carl's. Lisa stared at the screen. It's begun, she whispered. She knew she could walk away, package it all up, hand it to the lawyer, sell the hotel, return to a simpler life. However, Lisa had never been the kind to turn her back on wrongdoing. She stood, gathered every evidence into a bag, and locked the metal cabinet. This was no longer just a hotel, this was a battlefield, and she hadn't come here to merely clean. She came to cleanse it thoroughly. Around midnight, the wind howled through the thin window pane and flapped the old drapes in the manager's office. Lisa sat in the dim light, surrounded by invoices and notebooks full of tainted numbers. The money laundering imprint was more profound than she'd thought. Not just 3 shell companies, but dozens of forged invoices, vague maintenance services, and off-the-record transfers. Every detail was a brick in the maze of deceit Carl Bell had secretly constructed. Every path seemed to point to Desmond Vale, the old friend of Carl Darnell had mentioned. The name sent chills down Lisa's spine. It matched the DV signature on some invoices she found and appeared in an anonymous comment under an investigative article she'd read, "Briarstone is a front. Want the real mastermind? Look for DV." Lisa opened her laptop and Googled Desmond Vale. A list of glossy named firms appeared. Westridge Strategies, Kensington Growth, Holland Partners. All shared common traits, fake addresses, sketchy websites, and no one at the helm except Desmond Vale or individuals linked to him. She picked up her phone, trembling slightly, and dialed. Denise Carter speaking, came the firm, resolute voice of the journalist on the other end. "This is Lisa Thompson. I think I've found the root of the problem. And he's been here." Silence. Then Denise said, "I'll be there tomorrow morning. Don't do anything on your own, and if anything happens before then, write everything down." Lisa nodded, even though Denise couldn't see her. 9:42 p.m. the following evening. Lisa sat behind the front desk, pretending to organize key cards. She wasn't working the night shift, but she stayed, waiting. The glass door swung open. A tall man in a charcoal suit, polished shoes, and a confident stride walked in. A chin tilted upward, dark eyes sharp, and a smile, flawless to the point of being artificial. "Good evening," he said, his voice warm and smooth, like velvet over a dagger. Lisa stood. "Sorry, we're fully booked." He chuckled softly. "I'm not here to book a room. I just wanted to see who's been causing all the recent noise." "You're looking at her," Lisa replied, eyes unwavering. "Smoother than I expected," he said. "I'm Desmond." Lisa nodded, unshaken. "I know." He pulled out a matte black business card with no phone number, no address, only a single letter embossed in gold V. Lisa didn't take it. He tilted his head. "You've dug deep and called people who aren't used to answering. Touched invoices meant to stay buried. What are you trying to do? Become sheriff of this crumbling hotel? I'm just trying to stop it from being used like before." Lisa answered. Desmond leaned in, voice low. "You're playing a game you don't understand the rules of. And my rules. Don't leave room for goodwill." Lisa held her ground. "That's fine. I'm not playing to win. I'm playing to expose." His face tightened momentarily enough for Lisa to see he wasn't used to being confronted. Then he laughed. "Careful, Lisa. People like you are easily swallowed by silence. He turned and left without an overt threat, but his cold exit echoed through the lobby. After he left, Lisa went into her office, locked the door and pulled out a new folder. She scrawled across it in bold red letters, "Threats." She printed copies of contracts, photographed handwritten invoices, saved everything to a USB and placed it in a heavy envelope labeled insurance. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing: the fight had truly begun. The clock on the wall had just struck 3 p.m. when Lisa entered the corner cafe. Not the fancy kind, but the kind with dark wooden tables, warm amber lighting, and the smell of espresso soaked into the walls. The type of place quiet enough to say things no one dared speak out loud. At the back corner table sat Denise Carter, veteran journalist from the Bronx Gazette, a woman who had brought down 2 city council members with a single article. Denise stirred her tea slowly, her eyes sharp and piercing as Lisa approached. "Sit," Denise said. Lisa sat down, clutching her canvas shoulder bag like a thin armor layer. She placed a beige envelope on the table. Inside was a USB drive containing everything: copies of invoices, snapshots of handwritten ledgers, threat letters, lists of shell companies, and a diagram linking Desmond Vale and Carl Bell. Denise stared at the envelope for a moment, then said quietly, "If I run this story, it won't just affect a few shady managers. If what you're giving me is real, I believe it will reach banks, investors, and even the people Desmond funneled money to." Lisa nodded. "I don't need shockwaves. I want the truth known." Denise didn't smile. "I don't write clickbait. I write to pull what's buried up into the light. And the light, it doesn't choose good or bad. It shines on everything." Lisa didn't flinch, then let it shine. "I'm ready." Denise gave a slight nod and took the envelope. "All right, keep your phone close. You'll know when it's published." 2 weeks later, Sunday 6:45 a.m., Lisa woke up to her phone buzzing non-stop on the nightstand. Eyes barely open, she saw notification after notification. Bronx Gazette. Explosive new article released. Breaking: South Bronx hotel tied to multi-million-dollar money laundering operation. Her hands trembled slightly as she tapped the link. At the top of the page, a photo of the Velvet Lantern appeared, quiet and weathered. Below it, the bold headline read, "Lantern in the Dark." A small hotel, a massive laundering ring, and the woman who exposed it all. Her name appeared in the second paragraph: Lisa Thompson, 27 years old, front desk clerk and acting manager, who had uncovered the fraudulent financial web tied to Desmond Vale and multiple shell companies. The article was sharp, clear, and uncompromising. Denise had held nothing back. She listed the company's quoted invoices, described the sub-audit threshold method of transfers, and how Carl Bell used handwritten ledgers to hide off-the-record transactions. And after everything, the piece gave Lisa a title weighty but straightforward: The Keeper of the Light. 11:02 a.m. 2 unmarked police cars were parked in front of the hotel. 2 plainclothes detectives walked into the lobby. One of them held up a badge. "We need to speak with Ms. Lisa Thompson." Lisa was already behind the front desk. "That's me." The interview lasted nearly 2 hours in the office. They were courteous but firm. They asked for evidence, and she handed them the prepared copies. They wondered about the threats she gave them. Desmond's black card with the gold V. She left nothing out for every detail, name, and invoice. When they left the hotel, staff, Darnell, Nadine, and Tasha gathered behind the glass watching. Lisa stepped out calmly, as if she had just spoken with a cashier. "I'm not in trouble," she said, loud enough for all to hear. "But the people who use this hotel to launder money are." Everyone exhaled. Darnell nodded, his eyes softer. Nadine murmured, "You're not ordinary." Lisa smiled faintly. "I just don't want this place to be used again." That night she returned to the little cafe in Mott Haven. Denise was already there this time, with 2 cups of coffee and a rare smile. "You did something most people wouldn't dare," Denise said. "Not because you're stronger, but because you chose not to back down." Lisa leaned into her chair. "I just wanted a place to work, a place my mum could visit and feel proud of. I didn't think I'd be exposing an underground financial ring. Denise sipped her coffee. No one starts with something big, but when it found you, you stood up. Lisa went quiet. Through the window, the nightlight coated the old Bronx buildings like a thin film, not hiding the cracks, but making them real and beautiful. The light had been turned on, and this time it would stay on. The Bronx morning was misty, but inside the velvet lantern, things were hectic. The sound of hammers, screws, vacuum cleaners, all blended into a strange symphony within walls once used to size and half-filled bookings. Lisa Thompson walked through the lobby in a simple white shirt, holding a clipboard and a cup of cold coffee. Nearly a month had passed since the article rocked the South Bronx, and everything had changed not loudly but quietly. The hotel had begun to breathe again. Outside the old meeting room, once full of fake invoices and laundering ledgers, hung a new sign, Operation Center. Not because Lisa wanted it to sound cooler, but because now it truly was the heartbeat of the rebuild. She had wiped out the old vendor system and stripped all forged records. In their place, there are transparent contracts with local businesses such as laundry services from the shop where she once worked at age 21, and the hot water system maintained by a technician living just across the street. She rehired from scratch, not based on resumes, but by listening. She met each staff member and asked, "What do you need to do better?" From dawn to dusk, Carla, the kitchen worker, just needed a stove that didn't leak gas. Darnell needed a proper printer, not one that jammed every 10 minutes. Tasha, the shy room attendant, only needed to hear, "You matter." Lisa delivered each of those things. That Friday, she stood before the bulletin board and pinned a bold A4 sheet. "Notice, as of today, the Velvet Lantern is under new ownership. We're rebuilding from the inside out. If you choose to stay, see you Monday at 900 a.m. If you leave, I'm grateful for the time you gave. Lisa Thompson, Monday, 8:57 a.m. Lisa stood in the lobby holding a clipboard and her first hot coffee in days. Sweat beaded lightly at her collar. Nadine came in first, wearing worn shoes but fresh red lipstick. Darnell followed, clutching 3 thick spreadsheets. Tasha nodded shyly, her hair braided neatly. 9:12 a.m. In total, 12 former staff returned. Some had once doubted her, some had laughed, but they came. Lisa stood before them, no podium, no mic, just her voice. "I'm not a CEO, I'm not a savior, I just refuse to let this place die one more time. If we rebuild it correctly, none of us ever has to leave this place with our heads down again." A beat of silence. Nadine clapped first. Darnell followed. Then the whole room joined with not roaring applause, but steady, certain applause. A promise that didn't need signatures. The first week of reconstruction was chaos. The hot water pipe burst. Grocery deliveries were mixed up 3 times. A guest in room 204 complained of a ghost pulling her hair, which turned out to be exposed wiring. But amid the mess, something shifted. Once known for slipping out early, Tasha stayed late to reorganize the linen closet. Miguel, the handyman who once scoffed at Lisa, replaced the third-floor light bulbs without being asked. Once weary from night shifts, Darnell began arriving half an hour early to prepare the financial reports. Guests began to return, not because of ads, but out of curiosity. Is that the hotel that exposed the laundering ring? Lisa didn't want the hotel to become a headline. She wanted it to become an invitation. One night after checking the newly installed security cameras, she stood alone in the lobby. Warm lights glowed. The scent of floor cleaner hung in the air. The familiar space reflected her image in the glass door, not a night shift clerk anymore, but a captain. She picked up her pen and added a line to the to-do list on her clipboard, "Rename the hotel." No more darkness. It had to be something that carried light. Lisa looked up at the ceiling, where the old paper lantern swayed gently, as if it had always been waiting for someone to relight it. Lantern House, she thought. A light for the weary, a place not just to stay, but to belong. Tuesday morning, 8:00 a.m. Lisa stepped into the walk-in freezer to check the week's food delivery and was immediately hit by a pungent, sour stench. Behind her, Tasha gasped, "Oh my God!" All the meat and vegetables ordered for the soft reopening week were spoiled. The refrigerator had stopped working the night before, and no one had reported it. The thermostat now blinked an error code mockingly. By 9:30, a man in a fire inspection uniform arrived unannounced, clipboard in hand. "The extinguisher is out of compliance," he said flatly, pointing at the equipment that had passed certification 3 weeks prior. At 11:15 a.m., a delivery truck skidded as it backed into the loading zone, cracking the pavement, breaking a railing, and crushing 2 trash bins. The driver muttered, "Probably the brakes," sorry, and slipped away, like he was never there. By the afternoon, Lisa could no longer fill out compensation forms. Her hands trembled, her eyes were red, her coffee sat cold on the desk. Nadine sat across from her, arms folded. "Don't tell me this is all a coincidence." Lisa didn't look up. "I know. So what do we do?" Nadine pressed. Lisa lifted her head. Her voice was unusually calm. "We hold the line." That night, Lisa called a meeting with the remaining staff in the conference room. She didn't get into specifics. Not everyone needed to know about Desmond Vale, the laundering network, or the veiled threats hidden in a matte black business card. But she said enough. The person who used to control this place doesn't want to see it reborn. They'll try everything to break it. We might lose, but if we stay silent, we lose more our trust, our honor, our chance. The room fell silent. Then Darnell asked, "What about you? What are you going to do?" Lisa looked at each of them. Her eyes didn't waver. "I'm going to speak the truth. Louder, clearer." That weekend, Lisa called Denise Carter again. She didn't ask whether she should proceed. She said, "I'm ready to take this story to another level. This isn't just about money laundering anymore. It's about a community refusing to bow its head." Denise only replied, "Meet me Sunday. Same coffee shop, 3 days later. Mott Haven, Corner Cafe." Denise skimmed the new documents Lisa had brought. She sat in thought, then looked up. This won't just take Desmond down. It might shake the whole web. Banks, investors, even officials who've turned a blind eye. Lisa didn't blink. "If they're guilty, let them fall." Denise nodded. "What do I call this piece?" Lisa paused, then answered, "Not a crime story. A resurrection." The following week, the second article went live. This time it wasn't about corruption. It was about people. The keeper of the light, the story of a forgotten hotel and the woman who brought it back to life. The article featured a photo of Lisa standing at the front entrance with golden light behind her. At her feet, newly laid bricks. Inside, a gleaming front desk. And on the wall, the first picture ever rehung, a Bronx street corner at sunset. Denise wrote, "Lisa didn't just repair a building, she rebuilt trust. When the dark is exposed, most people walk away. She stayed." And that act didn't just save a hotel, but a whole block. The response came faster than Lisa expected. Calls from the community poured in. The bakery next door offered to supply breakfast pastries. A local school asked about hosting a career day. A street artist proposed a mural on the hotel's outer wall. But the most significant response was silence. No more surprise inspections, no more strange malfunctions. Lisa knew the storm wasn't gone, it was gathering. One late night, after guests had gone to sleep and all the room lights were out, Lisa stood alone on the front steps. A gentle breeze, the soft glow of the paper lantern above. She sipped her tea. Tasha came out from behind and handed her a black envelope. Lisa opened it. Inside was a thick piece of paper printed in silver ink. "You think you've won. But remember, attention doesn't mean safety. Some debts don't disappear. They wait." No signature, no trace. Lisa folded the letter. No shudder, no retreat. She returned to her office and opened the third drawer of the locked secret. She filed the letter into a new folder labeled Threats, Part 2, and next to it, still resting, was a USB drive labeled in her handwriting "Insurance." Lisa didn't know what would happen next. But now she wasn't afraid. The scariest thing had already happened. She had once been silent. Now she wasn't anymore. Autumn winds swept through the streets of the Bronx, rustling the newly hung sign Lantern House. Inside the lobby, warm light filtered through the glass, reflecting off polished floors and walls now covered with photos of residents. When Darnell approached, Lisa stood behind the front desk, finishing the monthly expense report and holding a black envelope. His face looked pale. "Someone left this for you," he said. "No name, no message." Lisa took it, her fingertips brushing against the velvet-like paper. On the front, written in silver ink, Lisa Thompson in a delicate, graceful script, unlike any previous threats. She opened it. Inside, a handwritten note, each line carefully penned, "I'm not here to excuse mistakes. I only wanted to see what my son lacked the character to protect. If you'll allow it, I'd like to meet." Alma Vale. Lisa froze. Vale. That name echoed from the old darkness. She looked up through the glass and saw an older woman standing at the bottom of the steps, leaning on a cane, wrapped in a long ash-gray coat. She didn't look like a threat. She looked like an apology never spoken. Lisa stepped outside. "You're Alma Vale." The woman nodded softly. "Desmond's mother." Lisa said nothing, not angry, not suspicious, but not easily forgiving either. "I didn't come to smooth things over." Alma said, eyes steady. "I know I failed to raise him right, but I've followed what you've done, and I believe if my husband Desmond's father were alive, he would stand with you." Lisa frowned. "I don't need a mother apologizing for her son's crimes." "No," Alma replied. "I'm not here to apologize for him. I came for another reason." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small, dark blue velvet pouch. She offered it with both hands. "My husband was an architect. He designed affordable housing for the South Bronx when no one dared invest here. He left this behind. He would want you to use it to finish the work he couldn't." Lisa opened the pouch. Inside was a check for $10,000, along with a small handwritten note. "Rebuilding is always more complicated than tearing down. But in your hands, I believe it will endure." Lisa swallowed hard, not because of the money, but because of the recognition. Sincere, unconditional, from someone she'd never expected. "Why me?" she asked hoarsely. "Because you didn't run," Alma said. "You did the right thing without waiting for permission." She turned to leave, strolling down the steps. Before getting into the car, she looked back once. Sometimes the only light we have is the light we ignite ourselves. That night, Lisa sat alone in her office, staring at the check copy and rereading the note for the third time. Outside, guests were enjoying dinner. Tasha giggled somewhere in the kitchen. Darnell was bantering with a guest about the Knicks. Carla bakes her signature peach cinnamon cookies every Friday night. No threats, no cold voices, just life. Lisa looked around. Her desk was no longer just for reports. It now held blueprints for a mini library and a draft plan titled Lantern Legacy, a scholarship fund for Bronx students. She opened a new notebook and on the first page wrote boldly, "We don't just run a hotel, we open doors for anyone looking for a way home." In the warm silence of Lantern House, Lisa realized something deeper than victory. She didn't need to erase the dark. She only needed to keep her light burning. That night, the lights along the street swayed gently in the autumn breeze, and inside Lantern House, the space buzzed with life as if darkness had never touched it. Today, it was no longer just a hotel. Today, it has become a symbol of return. Lisa Thompson stood on the third floor, gazing down at the grand lobby, once the low ground of memory, where forged numbers raced across paper, where silence reigned from exhaustion and resignation. Now it sparkled with glass pendant lights, tables and chairs made from repurposed wood, newly varnished to a shine. Every corner was filled with laughter, footsteps, and life. Guests of all kinds filled the room, residents, teachers, students, a few street performers, retirees, young parents with children in tow. No designer outfits, but everyone dressed with care as if attending something that mattered because it genuinely did. On the small stage near the fireplace, Tasha sang a classic jazz tune, her voice deep and soulful, silencing the room with raw emotion. The young woman who once walked with her head down past the front desk now stood tall, eyes lit under the warm lights. In the far corner, Darnell poured lemonade while animatedly debating the Knicks season with two elderly guests. Miguel, once skeptical of Lisa's dream of rebuilding, was now helping children slide chairs into place for new arrivals. Everyone had changed, not into someone else, but into the best version of themselves. When the music ended, applause followed. Carla, wearing a simple floral dress and holding a tray of her famous peach cinnamon cookies, nudged Lisa playfully, "If you don't come down and claim your cookie, I'll eat it myself." Lisa chuckled, soft but genuine. She wore a borrowed silk green dress from Tasha's cousin, simple fitting, and for the first time she felt beautiful, not because of how she looked, but because she finally knew who she was. A guest whose name no one knew approached and invited her to say a few words. Lisa hesitated, but Carla stood behind her, arms crossed with a look that brooked no refusal. So Lisa stepped up. No microphone, no speech cards, just her voice in the room that had once collapsed under silence. "When I was little, I asked my mum why people called this the worst part of the Bronx. She said, because they don't look closely enough. They don't see the beauty here. Back then I didn't understand, but now I do." The room was still. The lights seemed to dim, slightly warmer, gentler. Lisa continued, "We were dismissed, distorted, turned into tools by people who never stepped in to ask, 'What do you need?' But we didn't break. We are the backbone of this place. And when Lantern House was almost swallowed by greed, it was you, each of you here, who pulled it back." She looked around at Nadine, Tasha, Darnell, Miguel, and the many whose names she didn't yet know, but whose smiles felt like longtime friends. "I signed the papers, yes. But you built this house with your hands, courage, and belief that we deserve a place that treats us with dignity. Thank you for not letting go." The room didn't erupt like in a movie. It just stood and applauded, firm, heartfelt, like saying, "We see you. We understand you. We're with you." That night, after the last guest left and the lights began to dim, Lisa and Carla sat on the front steps of Lantern House, each with a cup of warm cider. "You did it," Carla said, eyes gazing toward the street. "Not me," Lisa replied. "We did." They clinked their cups. The wind blew gently across the newly mounted sign. Under the streetlight, the words stood clear, "Lantern House, a place to belong." Lisa looked up at it. Then down the familiar street. From a third-floor window, a child waved at her. She waved back. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for now, this place was home, not just for her, but for everyone. And the lantern on the roof would continue to burn, no matter how strong the storm. The morning in the Bronx carried a rare stillness. Not just because the sky was clear or the sun was gentle, but because people had grown used to lantern houses always being lit. Lisa Thompson stood by the window of room 301, freshly renovated. From there, one could make out the faded skyline of the city, blending into the low brownstone rooftops of the South Bronx. The floor had been polished, new curtains hung, and the scent of fresh lemon, Carla's homemade floor cleaner, lingered faintly. However, the paint or linens didn't make Lisa stand still in the quiet room. It was the meaning of it. This was once Carl Bell's transaction room, where false contracts were signed, records doctored and guilt disguised. Now it was clean, bright, ready for something new. That evening was the Fall Community Gala's first official event in Lantern House's Grand Hall. No tickets, no registration, no restrictions. Long tables overflowed with food made by neighbors. Lorna's apple pie from the bookstore. Leon's family recipe, roast chicken from the sandwich shop, and Carla's famous banana pudding. Children ran between tables in DIY princess dresses and borrowed shiny shoes. Elders played dominoes while trading old stories. Once just night shift co-workers, the Lantern House staff moved in perfect rhythm, hanging lights, setting chairs, singing along to the background music like a nameless but unbreakable team. Lisa stood at the edge of the hall, one hand in her pocket, the other holding a glass of peach tea. The green dress from before still fit, but it didn't make her stand out tonight. It made her belong. She didn't need to be seen, she only needed to see that everyone was at peace. Some guests tried coaxing her on stage again. This time, she didn't resist. Lisa stepped up. No mic, no speech, just herself as always. When I was young, I stood at a bus stop with my mum shivering, hoping someone would smile at us. But they just walked past. Because we didn't look like we belonged. We didn't have an address. We didn't have a place to return to. She paused. The room hushed. I can't change that past, but I can build a place where no one ever has to stand on the outside again. That's why Lantern House exists. Applause didn't roar. It resonated sure and steady like the breath she had held for months finally released. Lisa bowed her head, not humbly, but because she finally allowed herself to be proud. That night, after the last plate was cleared, Lisa and Carla sat again on the hotel steps, each with a cup of warm cider. "You seem deep in thought," Carla said, side-eyeing her. "I'm thinking about the future," Lisa replied, eyes on the quiet street. "A scholarship fund, job training. There's still so much to do." Carla chuckled. "You don't know how to stop, do you?" Lisa shrugged. "If you stop before it's done, that's not an ending. That's abandonment." They clinked cups again. Above them, the Lantern House sign swayed in the soft night breeze. Weeks later, another letter arrived. No silver ink, no warnings, just a plain card, inside a check, and a few handwritten lines. "Thank you for making me believe again. This is the first donation to the Lantern Legacy Scholarship Fund. Someone who once didn't know where home was." Lisa read it 3 times. Then she picked up a pen and added a new line to the long planning board on her office wall: Lantern Legacy Fund. Goal 100 scholarships for neighborhood kids. In the night air of the South Bronx, Lantern House still shone. Not because it was luxurious, not because it was famous, but within its walls burned the light of trust from people once hurt, once abandoned, once convinced they weren't worthy. Lisa Thompson, once the girl on the night shift, was now the keeper of a flame that would never go out. And that light belonged to all of them. A promise made in the dark, a home for those who choose to begin again, a legacy written in action. One day, one person, one choice at a time.